there is an island that should not exist. Not because of what is on it, because of what it is made of. Sable Island is a crescent of sand in the middle of the North Atlantic, 300 kilometers from the coast of Nova Scotia. It is 42 kilometers long and at its widest point less than 2 kilometers across. It rises barely 30 meters above sea level at its highest point. It is, by any geological measure, a temporary structure. A sandbar that should have been swallowed by the Atlantic centuries ago. It is still there. And beneath it, in the shallow gray water surrounding its shores, lie the remains of at least 350 ships. Possibly more. The graveyard of the Atlantic. A stretch of ocean so consistently deadly that it has been marked on charts with a skull for 400 years. But the ships are not the strangest thing about Sable Island. The strangest thing is that the island itself is alive in a way that most land is not. It moves. It breathes. It changes shape from year to year, from decade to decade, from century to century. The island you see on a map from 1800 is not the same shape as the island that exists today. And the island today will not be the same shape in 2100. This is Sable Island, and it is one of the strangest places on Earth. The island sits on the outer edge of the continental shelf, where the cold Labrador Current meets the warm Gulf Stream. This collision of currents produces some of the most unpredictable weather in the North Atlantic. Fog so thick that ships navigating by sight simply disappear into it. Storms that arrive without warning. Waves that build to 15 meters in hours. And beneath the surface, sandbars extending kilometers from the island's shore in every direction, invisible until a hull is already resting on them. The first recorded shipwreck at Sable Island was in 1583. Sir Humphrey Gilbert's expedition, returning from Newfoundland. One of his ships struck the island and sank. Gilbert himself survived. He sailed on and was never seen again. The island had announced itself. Over the following 4 centuries, the wrecks accumulated. Fishing vessels and merchant ships, and warships and passenger liners. Ships carrying settlers to the New World, and ships carrying cargo back to the old. Ships that knew the island was there and tried to avoid it. Ships that did not know it was there at all. The Atlantic fog erased the distinction. 350 documented wrecks. The number is certainly an undercount. The early centuries of Atlantic navigation are poorly recorded. Ships that vanished without trace may lie in the sands around Sable, without anyone knowing they are there. The island keeps its secrets. The uncomfortable part. For most of its history, Sable Island was not just a hazard. It was a trap with a human component. From the 16th century onward, there were people on Sable Island. Not settlers, not explorers. Wreckers. People who lived on the island and salvaged the cargo from ships that struck its shores. The practice had a legal gray area. In some periods, in some jurisdictions, salvaging cargo from a wreck was permitted. What was not permitted, in any jurisdiction, was luring ships onto the shore deliberately. The evidence for deliberate wrecking at Sable Island is contested. The stories exist. Lights on shore positioned to mislead navigators. False signals in the fog. The specific accusations are difficult to verify at this distance. What is not contested is that the salvage economy around Sable Island was real, and that real economies create real incentives. And that real incentives in isolated places with no oversight produce outcomes that formal history tends to record carefully and informally acknowledge. The Canadian government eventually established a life-saving station on the island in 1801. Its purpose was officially to rescue shipwreck survivors. Its presence also ended the era of unregulated salvage. Whether these two facts are connected is left as an exercise for the reader. The island moves. This is not a metaphor. Sable Island is composed entirely of sand. It has no bedrock, no geological foundation. It is a dune system maintained by a dynamic balance between the waves that erode it and the currents that deposit new sand. The eastern tip of the island advances into the Atlantic at approximately 200 meters per year. The western end is simultaneously being eroded away. The island is migrating eastward. Ships that wrecked on the western shores of Sable Island in the 18th century are now offshore, underwater, as the island has moved past them. Ships that are currently in the shallow sand around the island will eventually be left behind as the island continues its migration. The graveyard is in motion. The island has changed its shape substantially in recorded history. Ponds that existed in the 19th century are now gone. New ponds have formed. The freshwater lens beneath the island, held in place by the weight of sand, shifts as the island shifts. The island is not a stable geographic feature. It is a process. The map ends here. The territory continues. In 1737, around 60 wild horses were brought to Sable Island. The exact circumstances are debated. Some accounts say they were placed there deliberately, others that they were survivors of a shipwreck. What is not debated is that they survived, and bred, and adapted. The Sable Island horses are today a distinct population of approximately 500 animals. They have lived on the island for nearly 300 years without human management. They eat the marram grass that grows on the dunes. They drink from the freshwater ponds. They have developed a stockier build than their mainland ancestors, an adaptation to the wind and the cold. They are, in the most literal sense, wild. Not feral. Wild. No domestic ancestry in living memory. The horses are protected by Canadian law. Nobody feeds them. Nobody manages them. Nobody interferes with their lives in any way. They are observed by researchers from a distance. They are the closest thing to genuinely wild horses that exist in the modern world. They have been living on a graveyard for 3 centuries, walking across sand that covers the remains of ships and the people who were on them, unbothered by this, adapted to it, making a life in a place that has killed thousands. The island is also home to the largest breeding colony of gray seals in the world. Tens of thousands of seals hauling out on the beaches every year. The beaches where ships wrecked. The beaches that were the last thing sailors saw before the Atlantic took them. There are birds, Ipswich sparrows that exist nowhere else on Earth. A subspecies that evolved on the island and breeds only here. An animal whose entire existence depends on a sandbar that should not exist. There are plants. Marram grass and beach pea and sea rocket, species adapted to sand so unstable that most plants cannot root in it. Plants holding the dunes together against the Atlantic wind, buying the island another season, another year, another decade of existence. Sable Island became a Canadian National Park Reserve in 2013. Access is restricted. No permanent residents. A small research station. Scientists studying the horses, the seals, the birds, the dune dynamics, the wrecks. The island observed but not inhabited. The wrecks are still there. Some are visible at low tide, timber ribs emerging from the sand like the bones of something enormous. Most are buried deeper, the sand having moved over them, around them, through them over decades and centuries. The island digests its dead slowly. New surveys add to the count. Ground-penetrating radar and sonar reveal structures in the sand that were previously unknown. The number 350 is a floor, not a ceiling. There is something about Sable Island that resists easy description. It is not dramatic in the way that famous dangerous places are dramatic. There are no cliffs, no volcanoes, no visible evidence of what it has done. It is just sand, and gray water, and fog, and horses. The danger is invisible. The sandbars extend beneath the surface. The fog hides the horizon. The currents carry ships toward the island, without the crew understanding what is happening until the hull touches sand. This is how most of the 350 ships were lost. Not in dramatic storms with waves crashing over the bow. In fog. In the quiet, ordinary, completely disorienting Atlantic fog that turns a known ocean into an unknown one, that makes a ship's position uncertain by miles, that turns a sandbar marked on every chart into an invisible wall. The fog is still there. The sandbars are still there. Modern navigation has made the island far less deadly than it was. GPS and radar and satellite positioning have removed most of the uncertainty that made Sable Island so dangerous. The last major shipwreck at Sable was in 1947. The island has not changed. The technology has. The graveyard is closed, mostly, to new arrivals. The horses still run across it. In the morning light, on a beach that has not had a permanent human resident for decades, wild horses move along the waterline. Behind them, somewhere in the sand, the ribs of a ship from 1820. Ahead of them, the Atlantic, gray and enormous. The same ocean that brought the ships and took the sailors, and has been moving the island eastward at 200 meters per year for as long as anyone has been measuring. The island will not be here forever. The sand that makes it is borrowed from somewhere else and will eventually be returned. The wrecks beneath it will be left behind as the island migrates away from them. The horses will have nowhere left to go. But that is not today. Today, the island exists. Today, the horses run on a graveyard that does not know it is a graveyard. Today, the Atlantic fog comes in the same way it has always come, indifferent to the charts and the GPS signals and the 350 wrecks lying in the sand. Some places are not dangerous because something went wrong. They are dangerous because of what they are. Sable Island is sand in a fog in an ocean. That is all it has ever been. That is enough.